There are certain things that we've just come to expect from horror games. It's always dark backstory this and body horror that, and we just drink it up. But every now and then, a developer will come out with something that takes us by surprise. It takes bravery to disregard all the tried and tested approaches, going out on a limb and seeing if players are going to vibe with something new. Let's take a look at some. I'm Amy from What Culture, and here are 10 horror games that broke all the rules. 10. Stories Untold. Getting rid of the jump scares. One of the oldest tricks in the book when it comes to horror games or movies is the jump scare. When used sparingly, jump scares can be an effective way to raise a player's heart rate and make them feel a little bit more on edge. But the key word here is sparingly, because when overdone, jump scares can absolutely kill a game's atmosphere. If you rely completely on the threat of a screaming monster flashing up full screen to lend your game some tension, then you've not made a very good game. Luckily for the jump scare reverse, games completely devoid of this staple do exist. Stories Untold tells its story through 4 episodes, in which you slowly uncover the player character's situation, mainly through playing games inside the game itself. By virtue of its style, the game doesn't lend itself to the classic scares of monsters hiding around corners. Instead, it uses atmosphere and intrigue to build tension and drive the narrative forward, with the final episode giving you the satisfying ending you've worked towards. 9. Among the Sleep. No saving the kids. A pretty common motivation for characters is that of saving their family, often specifically their children. It's something about their innocence and helplessness that makes the stakes that little bit higher. Well, in Among the Sleep, you're not out to save your kids, you are the kid. Playing as toddler David, you have to navigate the scary world around you that is tailored for much larger people. With his companion, a sentient teddy bear, David has to find certain memories to get himself back to safety and reach his mother, Zoe. Navigating several surreal environments and strange entities, David really is living every kid's nightmare. It's a fun angle to play as a kid saving themselves, and all the mechanics that come with that given the limited abilities of a child. For example, David can only run so long before he falls over, and in order to progress and move at all, he needs his teddy bear with him. It's the details like that that make it so good. 8. The Vanishing of Ethan Carter, binning off the gritty aesthetic. So often we're served the same gritty PS1 looking dark art style. Even when it comes to big budget games, the problem remains that every location has to be overtly grotesque. Like in Outlast 2, you literally walk over a floor of dead babies. It's unnecessary. Some of the greatest horrors in life can occur in very normal spaces, so why do no games seem to exploit that? Well, one game that saw all of the ugly game environments and raised us something beautiful is this 2014 adventure. Set in the fictional town of Red Creek Valley, Wisconsin, the open world allows the player to explore a genuinely beautiful area. The aesthetics were based on the stunning places around Poland's Krakonosze Mountains, with certain areas bearing striking resemblance to the real places that inspired them. Playing as paranormal investigator Paul Prospero, you discover the story behind the disappearances of Ethan and his family. The discovery mechanics encourage exploration, with the game doing very little to guide you in the right direction. Whilst it's agreed that the game does have its problems, it's been almost universally praised for its stunning visuals, proving that you don't need a dark, blood-covered aesthetic to make a good horror game. 7. Strobophagia, Strange Locations. Leading on from Ethan Carter's highly praised aesthetics and setting, we need to give some credit to other games that thought outside the box with their locations. It can be just a bit lazy to lean back on a typically scary setting, like a hospital or an abandoned asylum, but if you start with an interesting location, a certain amount of intrigue is sure to follow. We'll throw some honourable mentions to games with almost comically specific settings, like Betrayer in colonial Fort Henry in the 17th century, or Narcosis in an undersea methane mining complex in the wake of an earthquake. But for this entry, we're going to praise Strobophagia. When was the last time you played a game set at a cursed rave? At the sight of a psychedelic rave gone wrong, you find yourself running for your life, trying to escape the dark forces forces at play. With some trippy visuals and a fun smartphone mechanic to help you navigate the story, this 2020 release promises something different from the norm. Whilst players have complained of some issues with bugs, overall it's been praised for its fantastic atmosphere and setting. So if you're bored of haunted houses and old asylums, then head on down to the rave. 6. Never-ending nightmares. Realistic running. If you actually think about it, there is no good reason for the average horror protagonist to be an Olympic-grade runner. Even in scenarios where your character may be badly injured, they seem to be able to morph into Mo Farah when the situation calls for it. Lots of things make Never-ending Nightmares a really interesting, genre-bending game, but a small one that adds to its depth is the player character's limited sporting abilities. You play as Thomas, a man plagued by horrifying nightmares. The game's designer, Matt Gilgenbach, created it with his personal struggles in mind, using the game's story and appearance to reflect his experiences of OCD and depression. Another bit of himself that he chose to put into it, however, is his asthma. When you look at famous horror protagonists, the thought of labouring them with chronic asthma seems kind of hilarious in that it would almost definitely lead to their deaths. These are the kind of protagonists with which we've come to rely on their ability to outrun danger, so introducing a mechanic like this forces us to work smarter. By taking away the ability to run endlessly, the game's creator added an effective layer of realism and tension. 5. Stifled. Scrapping the gory graphics. Visuals are of course very important in horror. In lots of cases, body horror and aesthetically repulsive villains are used as the main selling point. Think of the unnerving, cartoonish gore in Fran Bow, or the all-too-real looking mutilations in Outlast. Your eyes drink it all in and tell your brain to be very, very afraid. This is exactly where Stifled took a hard left turn, deciding that instead of scaring us with visceral images, they would build their game around the idea of echolocation. The game is at its best when you're navigating the darkness, the simplistic graphics revealing the outline of your settings only when sound occurs. In this context, you can only see your enemies in line work. There's none of the gross out factor, not even the subtle horror of the uncanny valley, but the game works regardless. The story and the slowly unfurling mystery work well enough with the minimalist appearance that we don't miss the cheap scares. Alternating between line work and simple 3D, none of the environments are fear-inducing by nature and work well nonetheless. 4. Darkwood. No hand-holding. It's a bit of a staple of mystery and horror games to force you to complete a series of convoluted, overly complex puzzles. Even when things get tough though, it can still feel a little off-putting when a game steps in to guide you through it, when you just know you could have figured it out yourself. One incredibly well-received game that lets you take the reins is 2017's Darkwood. A top-down survival horror, Darkwood allows you to wander around a forest piecing together the storyline and scavenging to survive. Your choices and relationships with NPCs influence the eventual outcome, and there are certain scenarios and mysteries that need to be solved. But even when the going gets tough, you're left pretty well alone. The puzzles are challenging and conducive to the storyline, driven by meaningful interactions and a forward momentum. Filled with cool characters and locations, an air of mystery, and a queue of awaiting surprises, Darkwood makes for a challenging and satisfying experience. 3. S.T.A.L.K.E.R. Shadow of Chernobyl. Daytime terror. Everyone knows that everything is scarier at night. It's all dark and shadowy, and every snapping twig or creaking floorboard could be a killer sneaking ever closer. It's easy to see then why the majority of horrors are set in the dark. The S.T.A.L.K.E.R. series takes a different approach. Set in an alternate universe where Chernobyl experienced a second nuclear disaster in 2006, you assume the character of an illegal scavenger in the wasteland, lovingly nicknamed a stalker. You're rescued from the site of a vehicle crash by a fellow stalker and set out on a series of tasks. Out in the zone, the sun can't save you from the horrors that await, ranging from mutated animals and humans through to terrifying anomalies that cause glitches in Earth's physics. The things that can kill you are just as potent and scary in broad daylight. You can stock up on weapons and coat yourself with armor, but out in the nuclear wastelands, you're never quite safe. 2. Boogeyman. You can't run and you can't hide. 5 Five Nights at Freddy's really has been talked to death, we know, but part of its appeal was that as a player you couldn't run, hide, or defend yourself with a weapon. In an effort to avoid recommending this game to you after years of coverage have pretty much turned it into a meme, let's look at another, smaller game with the same kind of idea, Boogeyman. In this game, all you have to defend yourself is one measly flashlight. Playing as a kid sitting in bed paralysed with fear, you have to carefully monitor your room for any sign of movement, lest the big bad Boogeyman get close enough to snatch you away. Empowerment in horror games frequently falls to one end of the spectrum. You're either armed to the teeth and can blast away the monsters, or you have nothing to defend yourself and your only option is to run and hide. Boogeyman falls somewhere in between, encouraging you to stay tense and alert at all times, knowing that you can never truly kill the enemy, but also allowing you to be on the offensive with shining your light. It can be difficult to get right, but it can be refreshing to see a game take less of a hardline approach to the offensive and defensive problem. 1. Sweet Home, making the rules. This one game has been cited countless times as one of the most influential in the horror game genre. Released in 1989, Sweet Home served as a direct influence for many a well-loved horror title, including the infamous Resident Evil franchise. The game's story is roughly the same as that of its namesake film, but with certain parts expanded and adapted for gameplay. It follows a group of documentary makers who venture into a disappeared artist's home, looking to locate some missing artworks. After entering, they soon find that the mansion houses some dark secrets, and that the past has literally come back to haunt them. Featuring many of the staples we frequently see today, this RPG was actually one of the first to use note discovery as a way to reveal story. Despite its limited graphics and dated mechanics, it's been praised for achieving a haunting horror experience that could rival modern offerings. The game broke all the rules and expectations at the time purely by virtue of being innovative. The countless homages to its concepts and wide acclaim by critics over the years are testament to its fantastic reputation. And with that, we've reached the end of this list of 10 horror games that broke all the rules. Let us know about the game changers you enjoyed in the comments below, and remember to check out whatculture.com for more lists and articles like this every single day. I've been Amy from What Culture, and I'll catch you next time.